In the modern world, focus has become one of the rarest and most misunderstood qualities. People imagine focus to be a kind of mental tension, a squinting of the eyes and tightening of the mind, as though you must fight your way through a battlefield of distractions to arrive at a place called concentration. But that is not focus, that is simply friction. Real focus is not something you do, it is something that happens when the necessary conditions are created within you, and the most fundamental of those conditions is stillness, inner stillness. Stillness does not mean inactivity. It does not mean sitting like a rock or turning into a vegetable. Stillness means a mind that is not compulsively reacting to every little stimulus, every little thought, every sensation that arises. It means your inner atmosphere is not disturbed by the winds of what's happening around you. When the water is still, you can see clearly. The same goes for your mind. If you want to see life as it is, if you want to hold your attention without struggle, the first thing is to become still. But people are trying to focus without first attending to the noise inside. You want to sit down and read a book, but thoughts are racing. You want to meditate or work on something important, but your inner commentary won't stop. This is like trying to paint a masterpiece on a shaking canvas. It doesn't work. That's why monks are not focused just because they live in the mountains or because they chant mantras. They are focused because they have mastered the art of being still within themselves. Even if chaos is happening around them inside, nothing moves unnecessarily. This stillness does not come by accident. It is not about escaping the world or avoiding activity. It is about learning how to be involved in the world without being entangled in it. The entanglement is what disturbs you. You can be highly active, doing 10 things at once, and still be absolutely still inside. Or you can be sitting in silence and be the noisiest person alive because your mind is running in all directions. So don't confuse outer silence with inner stillness. You may switch off your phone, close your eyes and sit in a quiet room, but if your mind is chattering like a marketplace, there is no stillness. To cultivate stillness, the first step is to bring a certain awareness into everything you do. Most people live in a kind of autopilot mode. They react, they speak, they move not because they choose to, but because their inner chemistry is commanding them. The moment you become aware, truly aware, you begin to take charge. Awareness is the doorway to stillness, because when you become conscious of your thought patterns, your emotional tendencies, your compulsions, they start to loosen their grip. You start seeing that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even your body. This distance gives you the space to be still. Another key element is the breath. The breath is the bridge between the body and the mind. When the breath is slow, deep, and conscious, the mind follows. When the breath is chaotic, shallow, and unconscious, the mind follows that too. So if you want to move towards stillness, pay attention to your breath, not in a forced way, but in a relaxed, alert way. You will notice that as the breath becomes steady, the restlessness in the body settles, and the storm in the mind calms down. When you are still, your attention becomes naturally pointed, like the flame of a lamp that does not flicker. In this state, you do not have to force focus. It simply flows. Your senses become sharper, your mind becomes clearer, and your energy becomes more available to you. That's why in yogic sciences, stillness is not considered a luxury. It is the most fundamental requirement for any kind of mastery, whether of the inner world or the outer one. Without stillness, your actions are scattered, your thoughts are cluttered, and your emotions are in conflict. With stillness, everything aligns. People are always trying to control the mind, to suppress their thoughts or push them away. But the mind is not something to be beaten into silence. It is not your enemy. It is a magnificent instrument when used consciously. The problem is not the mind. The problem is that you are identified with its every movement. You think every thought is yours, every emotion is yours. When you loosen that identification, the mind starts to settle on its own. This is where true stillness begins, not by fighting with the mind, but by observing it, watching it like a witness without judgment or involvement. Stillness is the art of being fully present yet untouched. It is not something you create. It is something you uncover. Beneath all your mental noise, beneath your anxieties and ambitions, There is a natural state of stillness already within you. You don't have to build it, you have to access it, but this cannot be done in a rush. You cannot race your way into stillness. You have to slow down, not just physically, but in the way you relate to your inner experience. You have to become sensitive to the subtle shifts in your energy, in your posture, in your breath. When people speak of distraction, they often point to the world outside. The phone rang, the television was too loud, someone interrupted them, the notifications kept coming. It is always something or someone else pulling their attention away. But if you look a little deeper, you will see that distraction is not an external force. It is rooted within. The outer world may offer temptations and interruptions, but whether or not you get pulled by them depends entirely on the state of your inner world. A noisy mind will always find something to be distracted by, even in the most silent environment. A still mind, on the other hand, remains centered even amidst chaos. Distraction is not about the presence of noise outside. It is about the absence of stability inside. If your mind is constantly jumping from one thing to another, it doesn't matter how peaceful the surroundings are. You could be in the most serene monastery, but your mind will still invent reasons to wander. The habit of distraction is an internal condition that has been cultivated over years of compulsive thought patterns, unchecked emotional reactions, and lack of awareness. We think we are reacting to the world, but in truth, we are simply acting out our inner tendencies again and again. From the moment we wake up, we are flooded with information, opinions, desires, comparisons. The mind is overstimulated, overworked, but deeply undernourished. It has become addicted to movement, to constant engagement, to newness. This addiction to stimulation is the seed of distraction. The mind no longer knows how to rest in one place. The moment something becomes familiar, the interest drops. This is not because the activity lacks value, but because we have trained our minds to seek novelty rather than depth. And as long as the mind is chasing novelty, it will never know true focus. Distraction begins within because it is the result of an untrained mind. A trained mind can choose where to place its attention and hold it there without strain, but an untrained mind is like a restless monkey jumping from branch to branch with no purpose, no direction. The thoughts come and go, and we follow them blindly, believing every one of them to be important, relevant, urgent. But most thoughts are neither. They are simply habits, mental noise that we have mistaken for reality. The reason this is important to understand is because it puts the power back in your hands. If distraction is purely external, then you are helpless. You can only function well if the environment is perfect. But if distraction originates within, then it can also be resolved within. This is not about blaming yourself, but about recognizing the opportunity to grow. You can train the mind just like you train the body. Through observation, discipline, and conscious attention, you can bring the mind to a state where it becomes your servant, not your master. One of the biggest sources of inner distraction is emotional turbulence. When you carry unresolved emotions, fear, anger, guilt, envy, they do not sit quietly in the background. They express themselves through restlessness, through compulsive thinking, through an inability to be fully present. These emotions color your perception, distort your judgment, and prevent you from being grounded in the moment. So dealing with distraction also means dealing with the emotional baggage that feeds it. You cannot find inner focus when you are internally divided. Another internal cause of distraction is the lack of clarity about what truly matters. When you do not know what is essential, everything appears important. You scatter your attention in all directions, trying to do everything, be everything, achieve everything. But the more you chase, the more fragmented you become. Focus requires a certain inner priority, a recognition of what deserves your energy and what doesn't. This clarity does not come from thinking more, it comes from seeing more clearly, which only happens when the mind is calm and your perception is unclouded. To overcome inner distraction, you must start by observing your own tendencies. Where does your mind go when it is left alone? What are the patterns that keep repeating? What kind of thoughts dominate your attention? This observation is not about judgment, but about awareness. The more clearly you see your distractions, the less control they have over you. They lose their unconscious grip. The process is not immediate, but it is inevitable if you are consistent. Breath awareness is one simple but powerful way to cut through internal noise. The breath is always in the present. When you bring your attention to the rhythm of your breath, even for a few moments, you create a pause in the mental chatter. That pause is not empty, it is full of possibility. In that gap, your awareness expands and your ability to focus strengthens. This is why breath-centered practices are central in almost every meditative tradition. They do not eliminate distraction by force. They make you aware of a deeper center within you that is always still. Once you begin to experience this inner stillness, even briefly, you realize that distraction is not a permanent condition. It is simply a habit, and like any habit, it can be changed. You learn to stop feeding the constant craving for mental stimulation. You stop identifying with every thought and emotion that passes through you. You begin to live from a place that is deeper, quieter, and far more powerful than the noisy surface of the mind. Focus is not merely a function of the mind. It is the result of a deeper alignment between the body, the mind, and the energy system. In the yogic sciences, these are not seen as separate entities but as layers of the same being. If these layers are not aligned, your attention will be scattered, your efforts will be diluted, and your experience of life will be fragmented. When your body is restless, your mind cannot be still. When your energy is disturbed, your thoughts will be erratic. But when all these dimensions move in the same direction, focus becomes a natural state. The body is your first gateway to experience. It is not just a physical shell, it is a living instrument. If your body is full of tension, sluggishness, or discomfort, your ability to hold attention becomes compromised. You may try to concentrate, but the discomfort pulls you away again and again. That is why posture and physical balance are emphasized so strongly in meditative traditions. When your body is stable and alert, it creates a supportive foundation for mental focus. You don't have to fight your body to sit still. Instead, your body becomes an anchor that helps you settle deeper within yourself. Breath plays a critical role in this alignment. The breath is the bridge between the body and the mind. It is both voluntary and involuntary, which means it is a doorway between conscious and unconscious processes. When your breath is erratic, shallow, or rapid, your mind mirrors that state. When your breath is deep, slow, and rhythmic, the mind begins to calm down. Through simple awareness of the breath, you can begin to bring your whole system into coherence. This is not about controlling the breath in a rigid way, but about observing it, tuning into it, and allowing it to guide you into a more centered state. The mind, for most people, is in a constant state of movement. It jumps from one thought to another, from one memory to one worry, from one desire to another fear. If the mind is left undirected, it becomes scattered. But if the mind is aligned with your intention and supported by a stable body and steady energy, it becomes a focused beam of light. You can use it like a tool rather than being used by it. This kind of mental focus does not come by trying harder. It comes by cultivating harmony between your physical and energetic states. Energy is a more subtle dimension, but it is the most fundamental. Before a thought arises, before a word is spoken, there is a movement of energy. If your energy is flowing smoothly, without blockages or distortions, your focus becomes sharp, steady, and effortless. But if your energy is entangled in past experiences, unresolved emotions, or unhealthy habits, your attention becomes dull. You may want to focus, but your system simply does not cooperate. That is why energy cleansing and cultivation are such central practices in deeper forms of yoga and meditation. When your energy is clean, focused attention becomes a natural outcome. Alignment does not mean perfection. It means that all aspects of your being are working in harmony toward a common direction. For example, if your body wants to rest, but your mind is forcing you to work, there is inner conflict. If your mind wants peace, but your energy is agitated due to stress or stimulants, there is friction. This internal disharmony is what makes focus difficult, but if you can bring your actions, thoughts, and inner vibrations into alignment, the conflict disappears. You become a single, unified movement. In that state, attention does not require effort. It simply flows. To achieve this alignment, awareness is the key. You must first observe yourself, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Notice the quality of your breath. Notice how your body feels throughout the day. Notice the patterns of your thoughts. Notice the fluctuations of your energy. Just by observing, you begin to bring consciousness into your system. That consciousness is what initiates alignment. You start making choices that support balance rather than disruption. You eat in a way that supports energy, not just taste. You move in a way that supports vitality, not just appearance. You speak in a way that uplifts, not depletes. Small, consistent practices can have a powerful effect. Simple breathing techniques, regular physical movement, time in nature, eating with awareness, sleeping with a calm mind. These are not spiritual luxuries. They are foundational to building a focused life. When you care for the body with intelligence, when you engage the mind with awareness, and when you nurture the energy system with stillness, you create the conditions for a focused, steady, and powerful existence. The more these aspects move together, the more your focus becomes effortless. You do not have to chase it or force it. It becomes your natural state because your entire being is supporting it from within. Most people think discipline means forcing yourself to do what you don't like, punishing yourself into shape, or restricting your desires in order to achieve something. But true discipline is not about suppression, it is about alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction, that is discipline. It is not a struggle, it is a harmony. Discipline means your body listens to you, your mind listens to you, your emotions follow your direction. There is no inner resistance. Everything within you is working together, not against itself. In this sense, discipline is not a punishment, it is freedom. When you are disciplined, you are free from compulsions, you are free from the push and pull of conflicting desires, you are free from the chaos of indecision. Most people are torn within themselves. One part wants to grow, another part wants to rest, one part wants to focus, another part wants to escape. Discipline means you are no longer at war with yourself, your energy is no longer divided, it is focused, united, and therefore powerful. If you look at any person who has achieved mastery in any field, whether it is art, science, sports, or spirituality, you will find discipline at the core. Not because someone forced it on them, but because they saw the value of it. They understood that without discipline, brilliance remains unfocused. Without discipline, inspiration turns to frustration. Without discipline, even the highest potential remains unrealized. It is like having a powerful vehicle but never learning how to steer it. Discipline gives direction to your intelligence, to your creativity, to your inner drive, but discipline cannot be borrowed. You cannot copy someone else's routine and expect it to transform you. Real discipline must come from clarity, not compulsion. When you are absolutely clear about what you want, discipline becomes natural. It is not something you do, it is something you are. If you are still struggling to stay consistent, it means you are not yet fully clear about your intention. You may want many things, but you haven't chosen one direction with your whole being. Once that clarity arises, discipline is no longer a burden. It becomes a joyful, even sacred act. To cultivate discipline, you must first learn to keep your word to yourself. This may sound simple, but it is profound. Every time you promise yourself something and don't follow through, you weaken your own trust. You begin to doubt your ability to stay committed, but when you follow through, no matter how small the promise, you build integrity within. That inner integrity is the foundation of discipline. You no longer need external motivation or fear of failure. You act because you said you would, That inner consistency becomes your strength. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. Many people get excited for a few days, go all in with energy, and then burn out. Real transformation happens when you show up every day, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Each time you act beyond your moods, you are training yourself to rise above the fluctuations of the mind. You are teaching yourself that commitment is more important than convenience, and this is what builds mental strength, emotional resilience, and spiritual maturity. Discipline also means creating an environment that supports your focus. If your surroundings are full of distractions, temptations, and noise, even a strong mind can get pulled. Discipline is not only about inner control, it is also about outer design. Arrange your life in a way that supports your intention. Choose what you expose yourself to. Choose the company you keep. Choose the habits you nourish. If you walk the path with awareness, you will find that certain choices make you stronger, clearer, and more focused. Discipline is making those choices again and again until they become your way of being. Many people avoid discipline because they associate it with rigidity, but true discipline is dynamic. It is not about sticking blindly to routines. It is about being awake to what is needed in each moment. Sometimes the most disciplined thing to do is to rest. Sometimes it is to push forward. Discipline is not about being mechanical, it is about being conscious. It means you are not living out of habit or reaction. You are choosing your actions with awareness. That choice, made repeatedly, is what carves your character and creates your destiny. In the yogic perspective, discipline is called tapas, which literally means heat. It is the inner fire that burns away your distractions, your doubts, your inner weaknesses. Tapas is not torture, it is transformation. It is the heat that tempers steel, the pressure that creates diamonds. Without it, you remain raw potential. With it, you become a conscious force. This is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about being committed to your own growth with unwavering intensity. Discipline is your willingness to stand by yourself, to walk the path even when no one is watching, even when it is difficult, even when no reward is in sight. In the modern world, silence is often mistaken for emptiness, for absence, for a lack of engagement. But real silence is not a void, it is a space of immense presence. In that silence, there is an intelligence that goes beyond thought, a clarity that cannot be achieved through analysis, a knowing that does not come from books. This is not the silence of suppression, where you hold back your words or force your mind to be quiet. It is a living silence, a space where your awareness is so complete that there is no need for noise, no need for inner commentary, no need to fill the moment with anything extra. Most people are constantly thinking, not because they have something meaningful to think about, but because they are uncomfortable with silence. The moment there is a gap, they rush to fill it, with distractions, with chatter, with mental projections. This constant need to fill space with thought is not a sign of intelligence. It is a sign of restlessness. True intelligence arises in the gaps, in the space between thoughts, in the stillness where the noise of the mind subsides. It is in this inner quiet that insight arises, that real creativity is born, that focus becomes natural and unbroken. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the absence of disturbance. You can be surrounded by external sounds and still be silent within. Or you can be in a soundproof room and still be full of inner noise. Real silence is an internal phenomenon. It happens when you are no longer at war with your own thoughts. It is not about stopping thought. It is about not getting entangled in thought. When you can see a thought as just a thought and let it pass without grabbing it or pushing it away, you are stepping into the dimension of silence. This silence is deeply nourishing. Just as the body needs rest to rejuvenate, the mind needs silence to renew itself. Without silence, your thoughts become stale, repetitive, mechanical. With silence, there is freshness, aliveness, a sense of connection to something larger than your limited identity. That is why moments of silence in nature feel so powerful. It's not just the lack of noise, it's the depth of presence that silence allows. In that presence, your perception becomes sharper, your awareness expands, and your focus becomes effortless. Silence is not something to be achieved, it is something to be uncovered. It is always there beneath the surface of your mental activity. Just as the sky is always blue behind the clouds, silence is always present beneath the noise of the mind. You do not need to manufacture it, you simply need to access it. And the way to access it is through attention. When your attention becomes steady, when it is no longer jumping from one thing to another, silence reveals itself. This is why practices like meditation are not about doing something. They are about undoing all that keeps you from being in touch with silence. Focus that arises from silence is different from concentration that is forced. When you are silent within, your attention is not fragmented. You are not being pulled by 100 competing thoughts. You are present, fully and naturally. There is no strain, no resistance. You are simply with what is, completely. That is the most powerful form of attention, because it is total. It is not partial, it is not divided, it is not seeking escape. It is rooted in the now, and the now is the only place where life truly happens. The mind becomes restless when it is driven by desire or fear. But in silence, desire loses its urgency, fear loses its grip. You begin to see that much of what disturbs you is not coming from the world. It is coming from your interpretations, your assumptions, your mental noise. When that noise subsides, you become more objective, more clear, more stable. Your actions become precise because they are not reactions, they are conscious responses. This clarity of perception is the fruit of silence, and it is the bedrock of true focus. In silence, you begin to reconnect with your own essence. You are no longer just a bundle of roles, labels, goals, and worries. You are simply here, breathing, existing, aware. That awareness is not passive, it is luminous. It shines through your senses, through your thoughts, through your actions. When that awareness is anchored in silence, your whole system functions in harmony. Your energy is not leaking in all directions. It is gathered, centered, and directed. Focus becomes your natural state, not something you have to fight for. This silence is not about withdrawing from life. It is about entering life more deeply. When you are silent within, you listen more deeply, see more clearly, and act more consciously. You are no longer caught in the surface ripples. You are rooted in the stillness beneath. In that stillness there is strength, there is clarity, there is presence. And from that presence, a focused, purposeful, and powerful life begins to emerge. Gratitude is often spoken of as a moral virtue, a way to be polite, to acknowledge kindness, or to cultivate positivity. But gratitude is not just a behavioral choice, it is a profound shift in perception. When you truly experience gratitude, you are not just saying thank you to life. You are seeing clearly that everything you are, everything you have, and everything you experience is not entirely your doing. There is a vast intelligence at work behind every breath you take, behind every moment that unfolds, behind every opportunity that arises. When this recognition dawns on you, gratitude is not something you practice. It becomes the natural fragrance of your being. Most people live with a deep sense of lack. No matter what they achieve, something still feels missing. This is because their focus is constantly on what they do not have, what they have not yet become, and what is wrong with their current situation. This mindset creates restlessness, it feeds anxiety and dissatisfaction, but gratitude is the opposite movement. It is not passive acceptance, it is an alert and conscious acknowledgement of the abundance that already exists. In that awareness, a quiet joy arises, and when the mind is joyful, focused attention becomes easier and more sustainable. Gratitude softens the grip of the ego. The ego constantly wants to claim ownership. It says, I did this, I earned this, I deserve more. But when you look at life through the lens of gratitude, you see that so much has been given to you without your asking. You did not create the air you breathe, the warmth of the sun, the love of a mother, or the support of a friend. Even your talents, your intelligence, your body, all these are not achievements, they are gifts. When this truth settles in you, the ego quiets down. In that humility, focus becomes deeper because you are no longer distracted by the need to prove something. You are simply present, engaged, and open to life. Many people misunderstand gratitude as something that should only arise when everything is going well, but true gratitude is unconditional. It does not depend on circumstances. In fact, it is most powerful when practiced in difficult times. When challenges come, the mind tends to spiral into negativity. But if you can hold even a small sense of gratitude during those times, gratitude for being alive, for having the strength to face the difficulty, for the lessons hidden within the pain, it transforms your relationship with the situation. You are no longer just reacting, you are responding with awareness. That shift allows you to remain calm, centered, and focused, even in the midst of chaos. Gratitude is also a powerful antidote to comparison. One of the greatest thieves of focus is the tendency to compare your journey with that of others. When you are constantly looking sideways, you lose sight of your own path. But when you are grateful for your own life, its unique rhythm, its unique challenges, its unique blessings, you stop measuring yourself against someone else. That acceptance brings peace. And in peace, your energy becomes more available to invest in what truly matters to you. Focus is not just about intensity, it is about direction, and gratitude helps you stay rooted in your own direction without distraction. When the heart is grateful, the body relaxes, the mind clears, and the breath deepens. Your entire system shifts from a state of tension to a state of receptivity. In that receptivity, learning becomes easier, relationships become more harmonious, and work becomes more meaningful. Gratitude opens the door to intuition and creativity because it removes the mental clutter that blocks inspiration. You begin to see new possibilities, not because you forced your mind to be innovative, but because you created the inner space for insight to arise. Gratitude also deepens your connection with others. When you genuinely appreciate someone, you are not just acknowledging their actions, you are recognizing their presence, their essence, their contribution to your life. This deepens trust, builds harmony, and dissolves conflict. And when your relationships are rooted in gratitude, they become a source of strength rather than stress. This in turn supports your focus because the emotional turbulence that comes from unresolved tension begins to settle. Gratitude is not just an emotion, it is a force of coherence. It brings your inner and outer worlds into alignment. Gratitude is not about denying what is difficult. It is about choosing to see what is beautiful even in the midst of the difficult. It is a powerful lens that alters your entire experience of reality, and as your perception shifts, your actions follow. You become more attentive, more compassionate, more present. These are not just spiritual virtues, they are practical tools for a focused life. Gratitude does not demand that you change your life. It invites you to see your life differently, and in that seeing, your energy transforms. What felt like a burden becomes a blessing. What felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What felt ordinary becomes